Alright, this is Eastern State Penitentiary.
Yeah, we got 7 minutes.
Alright, woo! We're going into this.
Let's hang out.
This is neat.
Have you always wanted to go to prison, right? You can get a membership at the jail.
My eye, if I go drive home, you're like the sun is like blinding.
Oh, my sunglasses. Switch it.
Look how comfortable Alex looks in the prison environment. This is his natural and habitat.
We're about to run this shit.
It's a high quality of life in California.
So the site was just literally abandoned. So as we're walking through today, as you can kind of see where we're standing right now, there's a lot of uneven pavement. So it's really not safe having a penitentiary inside the middle of a city. So that's probably the main surface level reason of why this building shut down.
What one?
Oh, I remember that one.
I won it recently. You guys can skip that one.
Alright, so we are now standing outside of cell block 2. This is actually one of the oldest parts of the prison that we're standing outside of right now, because in 1829, the prison opened with cell blocks 1 and 2 being complete. So the prison was really an active construction site for about another 7 years until they finished building cell block 7 in 1836. And that wall is actually 8 feet wide, 10 feet underground, all the way around the penitentiary. And it was designed by a guy named John Haviland. He was the architect who designed the kind of castle-like facade of Eastern State. If you head inside, you'll see that there's just a little skylight. Yep.
Claustrophobic.
A little bigger than the room we're staying in.
I would pay a couple thousand for this.
No, we're gonna go in here.
Alright, so this is a diagram of the inside of the prison. I just wanted to go over a synopsis of what we were told about it. So right here are the little rooms where the prisoners would be located, and then you see here that there's also a room on the outside. This is a courtyard area where each prisoner had their own section where they could go outside for like an hour period during the day. The reason they were all separated and each room had its own was because this was supposed to be designed for total isolation. So each prisoner was in a bunk on their own, and they wouldn't see anybody for the entirety of their stay except for a priest 1 hour every 2 weeks. And that would also happen in this outside courtyard area, which had a door from the outside to lead in. And then you had this central cathedral-like area that you walk through to get to all the entrances to the prison cells. And you could also see that there's this pocket underneath that is the sewer system. Apparently it didn't work super well, but you see that there's all these pipes leading down from the toilets in there, so super neat.
Eastern State was America's most historic prison. And that's mainly because of the room that we are standing in right now. This room is the geographical heart of Eastern State, and it's the heart of the radial plan, which was an architectural system not invented by John Haviland, but he definitely made it world-renowned.
The radial plan is a building design that allows a single guard to monitor the entire building and a time before security cameras. He does this while posted on this spot here.
We're in this center room. Now we see here that 4, 5, 6, and 7 are longer and have second stories. And workers have kids, so they build schools. This is Beige Martin Elementary, opened in 1910. I wouldn't feel very safe, right?
Somebody go tell them that distribution is skewed.
And that probably happened. This is sort of emblematic of what Eastern State was like in the 20th century. Something's kind of funny about this baseball field, right? And it's not very big. It's not very wide, and it's not very deep. That's actually why they put a fence above the wall to try to prevent home runs from being hit over that wall. But apparently one year, prisoners hit 3,400 home runs over that wall. That number seems ludicrously high, but that's what Warden Smith wrote in the 1830s. In 1933 alone, there were 4 large-scale riots. And of those 100 escapes, a lot of them, most of them happened in the 20th century because prisoners could finally talk to each other. In the 1800s, there were just a handful of escape attempts because they were kind of, on a solo basis, one guy kind of planning out his own thing. But you asked what were the main ways that people escaped. It was going kind of over the wall, under the wall, or smuggling yourself out through the gatehouse. The most common way, though, is to get out through the corner guard tower we see there. Because all a prisoner would have to do is climb up the steps there, tie some bed sheets to a pole, and kind of rappel down the wall. There's only ever one successful tunnel escape, though, in 1945. And talking about the struggles of Eastern State in the 20th century brings us to this guy right here. This is the Big Graph. We call it the Big Graph because it's, well, it's big. And this graph actually details what's going on today in our prisons. There's actually 3 sides to this graph. This side details the U.S. rate of incarceration over the decades, starting in 1900 and going all the way to 2010. Eastern State is red because in 1970, that's when they shut the prison down. And over the following decades, there's a nearly 600% growth in the number of prisoners here in the United States, capping out at around 2.2 million Americans by 2010, and U.S. taxpayers paying around $80 billion annually to fund what people are calling the age of mass incarceration. The skinny side of the graph shows where the U.S. ranks in terms of other countries around the world in how many Americans per capita we incarcerate. And the back side of the graph shows what race looks like in our prisons today. Construction started in 1822 and they finished in 27 cell block. Big wall. Probably won't be that big, if it happens. Yeah, I think it's awesome. Okay. We are now standing outside of cell block 15. We actually began our tour right next to cell block 2, right there, so it comes in full circle. And this was the last cell block to be built here at Eastern State. The cornerstone tells us that this started construction in 1956 and opened in 1959. So just a few years after that photograph we saw in the central surveillance room. And this building is sort of emblematic of how Eastern State could not function in the modern world anymore. So I invite you guys to head on inside, check out the cells and area in there, and then we'll be ending our tour inside of cell block 15.
That's cool.
So we are now standing inside of cell block 15. If you guys want, you can step on over here. So this cell block is pretty different than the rest of the other cell blocks we were looking at, right? So we were looking down. So some big differences. It's dark, low ceilings. Yeah, we don't have those high vaulted ceilings. There's a lot of skylight. Yeah, it's much darker.
Alright, I'm going into another tour.
So we actually ended up going on a second shorter tour to the medical wing. At this point though, the new tour guide asked not to be recorded, so I'm going to go ahead and try to give a tour guide narrative of my own. Apparently, East State Penitentiary had one of the best medical programs for a prison at the time. You'd actually have prisoners from other places coming over to this one if they needed stuff like surgery or special treatment. They implemented stuff like electroshock therapy, hydrotherapy, and other things that people thought were effective at the time. At the time, this was part of cutting-edge research. Specifically, one of my favorite parts of the tour was to go into the surgical area. Apparently at the time this was super advanced. It was neat to see that a lot of it was still intact, including this giant overhead lamp. One of my favorite features of this room is the giant root that seems to be growing out of the wall over the doorframe here. A cool side note about the medical wing, here at East State Penitentiary, the inmates were actually allowed to be assistants in some of these laboratories, which means they were trained in the medical field by the time they got out of prison.
We went to the baseball field in Boston. Let's learn about prisons.
Oh, there it is. It's the Capone cell, huh?
I think it's this one right here.
Are you sure?
Face is cold.
Capone cell.
He said it was very comfortable, and it was a luxurious cell. It was furnished with a desk, a table, a lamp, a rug.
It's still in here. This is Al Capone's spot, guys. You can practically imagine him sitting right there.
Oh, yeah, you could easily yell at her or argue like
Hey, buddy, how's it going over there?
You're
Guys,
probably
it's
dying.
time for our escape. Here we go. All right, we just got out of the Eastern State Penitentiary. Yeah, what'd you guys think?
It was cool. Very cool.
Yeah,
Thumbs up.
okay.
Two thumbs up, but it's cold.
You know, it's cool. Yeah. Okay, that's it. Thanks.